now available in paperback and e-readers. Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess. The goddess next door takes on the threat of a deadly digital diva driven to destroy the world in this action-packed, all-new Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess featuring a bonus pin-up and the other two books in the Cyber Goddess saga at online bookstores everywhere today.
Over the weekend, I got a chance to take a look at DC Comics' latest so-called YA graphic novel, I Am Not Starfire. And I have to say that this is not a graphic novel. No, this is a dumpster fire in between the pages of a book. Now, your I Am Not Starfire is one of the worst so-called DC YA graphic novels I've read so far. And I've read some trash like your Gotham High, which was just absolute hot garbage. But this is hot garbage with flies and extra funk, and it's just pure landfill that belongs in Fresh Kills out in Staten Island and doesn't belong in a Barnes & Noble bookstore. Now, I have the feeling that I Am Not Starfire will be remaindered sooner rather than later, and it will wind up for 99 cents in the clearance section of your 99-cent store because this story is so terrible. I have to wonder what the editors at DC Comics were smoking when they went out here and greenlighted this nuclear atomic waste and let it go to print. Now, your I Am Not Starfire is the latest dud by YA writer Mariko Tamaki, who made a complete disaster over at Marvel with her She-Hulk run, which was just called Hulk at the time, but it was just one of the worst runs in comic book history. And your Mariko Tamaki followed that up with an equally horrible run on X-23, and now that she's made a complete mess over at Marvel, she's monkey branched over to DC, and she's gone out here and made an even bigger mess with the Starfire character. Now, the big problem that your Mariko Tamaki makes is not going out here and using the characters that are already organically established, but I thank God that she did not use Nightstar in this story, because I would have hated to see the Nightstar character ruined like this. But the whole thing is that we did not need this Mandy character. We already had an established character in Kingdom Come, created by Mark Waid and Alex Ross, called Nightstar, who is the daughter of Dick Grayson and Coriander, and is somebody who would have been a perfect fit for this YA novel. Now, your Nightstar is already a teenager in Kingdom Come, and she could have easily been transitioned organically over to the YA market. And with a competent writer, not Mariko Tamaki, a competent writer, you probably could have put together a fairly compelling story about a heroine coming of age, and that story probably would have flown off the shelves because many comic fans who had read Kingdom Come and many comic fans who have gone out here and were casual readers, they would have actually been interested in seeing the daughter of Dick Grayson and Coriander in her first adventures as a hero. Unfortunately, Mariko Tamaki does not go out here and, thank God, use Nightstar in her story. No, she gives us this absolutely horrific character known as Mandy, but this Mandy character is nothing more than a self-insert of Mariko Tamaki, because if you look at photos of Mariko Tamaki and you look at this whole Mandy character, you will see that Mandy looks just like Mariko Tamaki. So basically, what Mariko Tamaki is doing is inserting herself into the DC universe, making herself the daughter of Starfire, and then using that as the premise for the story, I Am Not Starfire, and we can all tell that she is not Starfire's daughter. No, she's just an avatar and a Mary Sue in an absolutely dreadful story. Now, I had some serious issues with I Am Not Starfire, and they start again with Mariko Tamaki being an avatar in this story. And in as that avatar, she makes herself out to be this short, fat, ugly girl. And even worse, she then goes out and talks about how she's this alternative goth girl. And she just does such a poor job of this goth character that it doesn't really give people a good understanding of what it means to be a part of the scene. Now, as somebody who has gone out here and written goth characters like Matilda Crowley and Lilith Graves in the books like the Spinsterella trilogy and Eternal Night, when I go out here and I make goth characters, it's to try to give people a better understanding of the goth subculture and the alternative lifestyle of the goth scene, and try to give people an understanding of why somebody is a part of that scene. But what your Mariko Tamaki does is just make this Mandy character goth, and in an effort to just try to make her not Starfire, but does not really go into the substance of the goth scene. And I really hate it when they do this in YA novels, where they take a character and make them goth in an effort to make them so-called edgy, but then don't go into the deeper aspects of the scene, or even talk about the most important thing as related to the scene, the music. Yes, they will go out here and present the aesthetics of goth, where the person is wearing black clothes and dark makeup, but they don't sit here and talk about many of the bands like Susie and the Banshees or the Sisters of Mercy, and they don't mention any of the bands as related to the music. And that's one of the things that really irritated me about this Mandy character. Yes, you gave her a goth aesthetic, but you didn't really even go into delving deep into the goth scene to show us why this character has these dark views. Now, they want to go out here and say she has those dark views to try to contrast Coriander, but it really doesn't work because Mariko Tamaki is an extremely shallow writer. Now, as the 17-year-old girl is trying to not be like Starfire, what she does is just become an extremely one-dimensional caricature with no depth, with no layers, and they show us this character living with Starfire. But I had to ask a critical question about this story. Where is Mandy's father? I mean, one of the things that made Nightstar a great character was we knew that she had a connection to Dick Grayson. And we all know that Starfire and Nightwing had a great relationship, and that relationship should have been the thing that was put at the forefront. But in Mariko Tamaki's world, your Mandy has no father, and she probably has no father because she probably didn't have a good relationship with her father. But we have Corey and her single daughter, and this doesn't really work well for me because Corey always made sure she stayed with guys who looked out for her. So I don't really see how this makes any logical sense as related to the character. But this story goes on, and we have all of these things talking about food a lot, like the Tamarind style spaghetti and meatballs, which is noodles and hot dogs. And then we go back, and then we have the core of the story, which is your Mandy saying she's not going to college and being adamant about not going to college. And this is supposed to be the main plot of the story. And as the story goes on, we run into her beta male friend, Lincoln, and then she's still talking about how she's not Starfire and how she wants to go out here and have this life in France. And she's not really, the story just falls completely apart. I mean, yes, there's a subplot about her having a crush on another girl, and in an effort to appear like she's trying to be the opposite, and it just, none of this stuff really works. I mean, the whole story just is a complete mess, and we go on with her complaining about how bad her life is and how she doesn't want to be like her mom, all until we get into the plot point where your Mandy is confronted by Blackfire, and as she's confronted by Blackfire, that's when the plot of this story, which was already rickety, falls completely apart and devolves into a complete mess, because that's when this already rickety and weak story starts to turn into super glorified fan fiction, because here we have this Mandy who never really liked her mother, then manifesting superpowers and going out here and beating up on Blackfire, somebody who has years more combat experience than a 16-year-old girl. And that's when this so-called story turned into super fan fiction, and that's when Mandy, the avatar of Mariko Tamaki, became a Mary Sue, and this Mary Sue just became absolutely ridiculous as related to storytelling. And I'm just deeply disappointed that DC Comics would go out here and greenlight this book for publication, because this book was just not ready for print, and it was just not fit for any sort of audience. I mean, critical question I have to ask about I Am Not Starfire is, who would go out here and approve this for publication? I mean, here you have a multi-billion-dollar company, and they're not doing a good job of protecting their intellectual property by allowing people to go out here and do their characters like this. Because if you really care about your intellectual property, you're going to go out here and make sure that you're getting quality publications. Now, somebody at DC thought, oh, this will be a nice idea to generate some buzz as related to these sites like these clickbait websites, but this is not going to generate sales in the long term for DC. I mean, this is an embarrassment of a publication. I mean, this I Am Not Starfire is just, the story is terrible. The artwork looks like color flats that are supposed to be layered on top of comic art, and there's nothing really appealing about this comic at all. I mean, I don't see how any reader of any audience could really find anything interesting about this story, because it just is just so poor all around. And I look at this book, and it's just not something that I would find appealing. You have a irritating Mary Sue heroine. You have a mother who just is out of character, because Corey never would act like this. And then you have a storyline that is just $2.50 worth of trash. And with comics like this, it's just easy to understand why Manga is beating up on the big two publishers, because Manga would go out here and they would have given you a compelling story better than this. Because I can see how you could have easily done a YA story about Starfire and sold thousands of copies. Again, DC had a perfectly good character created by Mark Waid and Alex Ross in Nightstar, and there's a perfectly good Nightstar story that could have easily been sold to readers, and that story with Nightstar could have easily been the thing to turn DC's YA division around. Unfortunately, DC doesn't seem like it cares about its YA division, and its YA division has been producing absolute garbage like Gotham High, like Nubia, Real One, and like this I Am Not Starfire, in an effort to pander to the social justice types. But the social justice types are not the ones who go out here and buy comics. No, the social justice types, they use comics to virtue signal, and because they use comics to virtue signal, they make hot nuclear garbage like this, and this hot nuclear garbage like this winds up being used as something for many comic YouTubers to go out here and roast up to get views, but it doesn't really allow the company to get readers. And that's the sad part about, again, I Am Not Starfire, is they had an opportunity to tell a great Starfire story with Nightstar and Nightwing, but they didn't do it because they wanted to virtue signal and get brownie points with the woke crowd. But the woke crowd isn't the one buying the comics. No, the woke crowd is the one who creates comics to virtue signal, and that costs companies money. And DC is guaranteed to lose a lot of money with I Am Not Starfire, because this is not a comic. No, this is an abomination calling itself a comic, and I say it's a crime against the comic book medium. This comic, so-called comic, is so bad, I can't recommend it for anything other than wrapping some fish with, because this comic isn't worth the paper that it's printed on, and it's an absolute disappointment overall. And your Mariko Tamaki clearly shows she's just not fit to be a comic book writer with this I Am Not Starfire, and she really needs to learn a lot about the craft of writing stories, because when I look at this story, it just doesn't know which direction it wants to be in, and it doesn't really have a good sense of the characters, and it's just an overall hot mess of a comic. And again, this comic is an example of why manga is now dominating in America, because with this type of poor quality writing and really extremely poor quality art, this kind of comic just cannot compete against manga stories where the quality level is just far superior to what's being presented here. I mean, you only get one chance at a first impression, and my first impression of I Am Not Starfire is I am not going to pick up any more DC YA graphic novels. And if you had a choice of reading this or a manga book like a Devil Slayer or a One Piece, you would definitely choose Devil Slayer or One Piece, because it's better than reading this piece of crap, which belongs again at the Fresh Kills landfill, because this comic is absolute hot garbage. Now, I'm going to be getting ready to publish my first comic, John Haynes at Death's Door, and I need your support to continue getting that comic to the marketplace. So if you want to donate to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App to help me get that comic to the marketplace, that would be greatly appreciated. And if you want to try my first comic, Esteem No Good Deed, you can find that comic on Amazon.com for 99 cents. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Now available on Kindle, Esteem No Good Deed. The Devil's Diva scares some stick-up kids straight in this action-packed Esteem series comic. Get Esteem No Good Deed on Kindle for 99 cents today.